Now, I bet you haven't seen this type of front panel on any case so far, unless you've seen some other reviews or you watched my coverage of their boot. So this is Cougar's AirFace Echo RGB chassis, and it is a bit different, and it has some cool features that you'll definitely love regarding the dust filters, regarding the I/O panels, and of course the front panel because it accommodates two 180mm fans. So you're equipped with fans and you don't have to worry about anything. Let's start from this inner part because it has loads of stuff, and for such MIDI tower case I'm quite shocked. So right in front what you can do is this. This gives you a direct access for the front dust filter. The top dust filter is magnetically attached, and you have a dust filter here at the back for the power supply. So it's covered literally everywhere. Now, when we go forward, as I stated, you have two 180mm fans on front and one 120 at the back. This is stock from the box, what you get from the factory. Now, on the front, if you decide to remove those 180, you get additional box as an accessory, which can be placed instead of those fans, and then you can accommodate a 3 120 or 2 140. The same thing goes on the top. Basically, you don't need an additional bracket, but you can go with 3 120 or 2 140, and at the back you can go with 1 120 or 1 140. That sums it up when we're talking about the fans, and basically it's really cool because one thing, they did give you an additional bracket if you desire to go with different fans. But because of the front panel and how it's designed and all the echo stuff going on with saving some sort of energy, and it kind of makes sense because usually what you get if you place 120 or 140 fans, they either spin up 140 up to 1800 RPMs, 120 spin up to, well, let's put it 2500 RPMs. These spin up to 1200 RPMs plus minus 10%, but that's the reason why we have this type of funnel shaped holes on the front, which kind of create better intake, at least. But when you take into consideration the benchmarks, and I'll get to that part of course, but when you take into consideration those, and when you take into consideration the fans, how they are spinning, which are dead silent to be honest, because they're big, they do create much higher airflow with lower speeds compared to other 120 or 140. But the funnel shape kind of helps it because it creates additional airflow and more focused airflow, let's put it this way. The one at the back, well, it spins up to 1000 RPMs, so it's silent, but is it effective? We'll get to that part in the benchmarks. Now, the side tempered glass, what I wanted to mention, and I usually forget about this, but particularly this one is a bit tinted, so it's not clear glass. It has a bit of a tint on it. Nothing drastical. You can still see your parts inside, and everything should be looking really good. Now, covering up the fans and the radiators, we have 360 on front, Possibility 360 on top, 120 at the back. Now, if you decide to go with a 360 on front, you can go with a 360 on top, and vice versa. So you either go for the front or for the top. Power supply shroud is quite interesting because we have two rubber grommets or two openings near the motherboard, which is really close, so you don't have cables running out on the power supply shroud, and that's really good. An additional opening for the GPU cable, which is right here, so you can create a waterfall effect. Now, what I forgot to mention, well, I didn't forget to mention, what I forgot to show in the close-ups is that you can revert the PCI Express expansion slots and get a vertical mount for the GPU, which means that you can flip it. You can use this opening here, push the cable, unless you want to hide the cable, but it's all up to you, of course. And with that sense, you have a vertical GPU position. It should be really good, and I totally forgot to test that out, but it should be really good because in this scenario, you have these two fans on front blowing quite nice airflow through the chassis, and that should be working quite nicely. Right here, I was a bit, well, not shocked, but surprised we have a Cougar logo quite subtle placed right here at the bottom. But this gives you an option, guys, and I'm reading your comments on YouTube, and I'm seeing that some of you guys are complaining that, I don't know, I/O ports are on top. Some of you are complaining I/O ports are on the side, which comes in play when you're having the side here at the bottom I/O ports, you can't place it on the floor, right? Because you don't have the option. And believe me, I don't like placing a PC on the floor, but I'm just giving an example. You can't connect anything. It's not that handy. So you would really like to have it on top. Now you can just flip it as you wish, and that's all it is. So you just have to do the cable management. That's it. Quite straightforward, simple, and gives the diversity for you guys that have the PC on the floor. I/O ports are on the top, or on the table, I/O ports are on the side. I think that's quite solid. Now we have a cable shroud on the side, which is okay because it hides the cable, but it's a bit too close to the opening, so the 24 pin kind of looks a bit, I don't know, not strangled, but it looks really tight. But in general, it does keep the cable quite nicely organized. And right at the bottom, you have a GPU anti-sag bracket, which has a thumb screw, so you can adjust the height accordingly for your GPU and keep that GPU straight in line. Everything else is really just straightforward placing and everything all together. Now, one more thing I totally forgot. This top panel can be moved from the chassis. You have two screws that you have to remove, and you just pop it upwards. So you can place your fans, radiators outside of the chassis, and that's basically it. At the back, what you get is a six connector 3-pin addressable RGB 5 volts controller. So the 3 fans are already pre-connected. You have 3 additional slots, headers that you can connect, well, for instance, AIO. And with that, you have to connect SATA power from your power supply directly. And the addressable RGB 5 volts 3-pin connector needs to go to your motherboard, because you can either go with a reset button, so use the reset button for switching the colors, so you basically don't need to use the 5 volts if you don't want to. But if for some reason you just want to swap it now and then, you can just press and hold the RGB button on top, which will automatically sync with your motherboard, and it's really that simple. So yeah, at the back we also have loads of Velcro ties to reorganize the cables. Nice possibilities in general, and I think we're talking about 3 centimeters, so you don't have to worry about cables pushing out the back panel, which is on pegs and thumb screw, as well as the side tempered glass. At the bottom we have a power supply shroud that basically has a hard drive cage for you to place 2 3.5-inch hard drives, and at the back behind the motherboard you have 2 more caddies for 2 2.5-inch SSDs. Now, since I'm into that technical stuff, what we need to go through is, of course, it supports ATX, micro ATX, and ITX motherboards. For the I/O panel, we have USB 3.2 Generation 2 Type C and 2 USB 3.0 Type A. Of course, 4-pole headset audio jack, which is multifunctional for headset and microphone, and the RGB button with power on button, of course. We have 7 expansion slots, and as I stated, you could go with vertical GPU. You just have to remove these 2 screws on the side and you'll get the access to flip it around. Maximum GPU length 390 millimeters, and I think that's in horizontal and vertical because it doesn't obstruct the front fans or radiators and doesn't obstruct the top fans or radiators, so you're really good to go. It only depends on if you go with air cooler, it's going to be different. Maximum CPU cooler height 190 millimeters, which is basically outstanding because you can really go with huge air coolers, and that's brilliant in those terms. And finally, the power supply length 200 millimeters. Now, I want to explain the exact name of the front panel. Now, these are created to focus on eco-efficiency. In those terms, convents taper inwards from a wide opening, leveraging thermodynamic principles to make the most out of the airflow funneled through the front panel. So this kind of goes in the correlation with the CGR 180mm PWM fans, which maximizes the cooling at no additional energy cost, reduces both environmental impact and ecological footprint. Now, when I hear those kind of sentences from official websites, of course, it kind of goes both ways, because it's okay, they're thinking about less energy consumption on the fans, which isn't a massive impact, but in general, when you take into consideration that they are still thinking about it and that they are doing it the best way they can and just finding those small spots where they can improve, that's a positive thing. Now, let me explain the benchmarks. When we go with AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, we have CPU going up to 72 degrees and clock speed 4995 MHz, GPU 70 degrees. Now, if you take a closer look, we have AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D paired up with the MSI RTX 4080 Super Gaming X Slim. In those terms, when you take into consideration others, what you get is a great cooling in terms of quiet, because I placed on purpose just to see how loud can it get. 100% after 70 degrees, nothing before that. 70 degrees, 100% fan speed, it doesn't create any unnecessary noise. Any PC with fans will create additional noise when it heats up and it needs to get cooled. That's quite logical. But this was quite solid, and I do have to say, enjoyable to actually check out the benchmarks without something humming on the side. And then with the funnel-shaped front panel with the 180mm fans that run at 1200 RPMs, creating nice airflow through the chassis, this is good. And then we go with Cinebench. It starts at 89 for the first 4 runs, and then it continues with 88, which is outstanding. The same thing happens with clock speeds, starting at 5045 and last 6, 5055. The nice advantage with this is that the scores in Cinebench keep rising from the first to the last one, with 21,429 finishing at 21,564. At the end, we can see that it kind of leveled up with 21,563, which is quite solid, and that is altogether quite nice score. Having a quiet build, quiet fans in general, creating nice airflow, not taking too much energy because it's kind of creating better airflow because of the front panel, and it looks cool, and it has cool features. I mean, you have nice options with the IO ports, adjustment top, bottom, nice access for the dust filters, quite easy. You don't have to remove the front panel. Front panel looks nice, different, and very attractive, I do have to admit that, and I'm really digging the front gunmetal color scheme. That's outstanding. The front is really simple, really enjoying the waterfall effect when we're talking about the cable for the GPU and the GPU anti-sag bracket. And if you don't need that, you remove the GPU anti-sag bracket and you just place your GPU vertically. So all options are there, and the cable management at the back is also quite solid. So yeah, thumbs up to Cougar. I mean, with the design and everything, and having a bit different approach. So yeah, thumbs up, PC Crazy approved badge for the COUGAR AIRFACE Echo RGB. Lovely case, I do have to admit that everything is here. You just have to build, which is also straightforward and easy. So link for the case is in the description, so you can check it out, pair up with their AIO and even their power supply if you want to have everything incorporated all together with the same brand. And that'll be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. See you next time tomorrow in another quite interesting video. Bye bye.